my friends, and welcome to today's episode of Healthy Living Happy Midlife. I am so glad that you are here with me today. And I want to begin with a question that so many women quietly carry around with them and rarely say out loud, right? Think about it. You've been doing all the right things. You're trying to eat well, stay active, keep up with your life, right? Yet your body feels harder in your body to manage all of these things than it used to be, right? Maybe the weight gain that all of a sudden has happened isn't moving, right? It's there. You're doing everything that you know you're supposed to do, but it's still hanging around, right? Your energy levels are up and down, and they're down more than they're up, right? Um, and inside you in your brain is going, what the heck is happening to me? Right? If that feels familiar, then I want you to hear this with so much compassion, my friend. I'm giving this to you with compassion and love, but also with clarity, because this is something that took me a long time to understand. This is not your fault. Even more importantly, this is not the end of your energy, your vitality, your dreams, all of the things, right? What's happening right now in midlife and menopause is not random, right? It's biological, it's hormonal, it's metabolic, right? And when you finally understand what your body's doing inside, everything begins to shift, right? From confusion to clarity, from doing 10 million things to try to fix it to doing the things that actually work, right? So the Midlife Metabolic Flip is the program that I have used, that I have created. It is the same framework that I have lived, I've tested, and used on a number of women going through menopause to feel energized, confident, and control of their bodies again. So talk a little bit about um, the program, but more importantly, what the point of it all is, right? So let me just jump right in. I'm going to talk about three components of the seven components of the flip. And the first one I'm going to talk about is metabolism, right? Because this word gets used all the time and thrown around. Oh, my metabolism is just slowing down. Oh, it's just my metabolism. But we don't really understand what that actually truly means, right? Metabolism is simply how your body creates and uses energy. Okay. It influences, yes, how you burn calories, how you store fat, your energy levels through the day, and even your mood and mental clarity, i.e., brain fog, right? When you were in your 20s and your 30s, your metabolism was just naturally more forgiving. Thank goodness it was, right? Your body could handle stress, poor sleep, and inconsistent healthy habits, and still bounce back pretty quickly. I mean, think about how many times, like when you were in college, you stayed up all night studying, and you got up, you took your test, and after that, you went for lunch, and you had classes, and you were fine, right? It didn't seem to affect your body in the way that it does today, right? So in midlife, because of menopause, now always have to remind people when I talk about menopause, I'm talking the phases beginning in perimenopause. Perimenopause generally starts, well, progesterone starts dropping when we're 35, but really we're looking at our early 40s into our 50s and early 60s, right? In midlife, because of menopause and aging, something absolutely changes, right? Our metabolism becomes far more sensitive to our hormones. They're going up and down and they're all over the place sometimes, depending on where you are in the menopause transition, right? It's more sensitive to lack of sleep, to increased stress, to inflammation, which is increasing because we're not sleeping as well, because our estrogen is dropping, because of environmental toxins and some of the foods that we may be eating. Also, it is far more sensitive to muscle. Muscle mass specifically is affected here, right? The greater muscle mass we have, the better our metabolism. However, as we're getting older, going through menopause and estrogen is declining, guess what? We're losing muscle mass. So when women say to me, and I hear this pretty much every week, I'm doing the same things as I always did, but now I'm gaining weight, not losing it. And I totally believe them because it is absolutely true, right? When we were younger, we could eat less and work out more, and we actually worked and we actually lost weight, right? The equation, calories in, calories out, that was the only part of the equation. However, nowadays, because the menopause shifts, our entire metabolic environment is shifting as well, right? Estrogen is declining, like I said, which actually increases fat storage. Where does that happen? Mainly around our belly. Muscle mass naturally drops and slows down our calorie burn, our ability to burn calories, right? This is not good. And again, inflammation rises for all those reasons I mentioned a minute ago, but that makes weight loss more resistant. It makes it so much harder to release weight, right? This is the moment where willpower, as we always thought it was, appears to just stop working, right? Did it work before? Yes, it did when we were younger. It is not anymore, right? And it's not because you failed, because you did something wrong. Um, it's just because those old strategies no longer match your new biology. Yep, chalk it up to biology. Biology, as my husband always says, is the science of naming things. So we're just gonna name this menopause, right? But truly, in a way, this realization is actually incredibly freeing. Right? It's not anything that we've done, right? It's just body is changing. We can't not make our body not change, like with hormones and all of these things. We can certainly do things to positively affect them, but these changes are going to happen no matter what, right? So what I want to do today is I'm going to talk about three components, why they're important, but I'm also going to give you one powerful shift for each one of these. Okay. And so for metabolism, your powerful shift, the one thing I want you to focus on is protecting your muscle, right? Muscle is metabolic currency in midlife through menopause. Okay. Strength training, adequate protein, and proper recovery. Yes, we don't want to be working out 7 days a week. Okay. These things are no longer optional. This is the foundation for energy, for fat loss, and for long term energy and vitality. Longevity, give it a name, right? So, really important. Okay, so that was the first of the three that I'm going to talk about today. This component I want to talk about is hormones. Hello, elephant in the room, right? We're talking about menopause. What's the first thing you think about menopause? No, not the weight gain. Hormones. Yeah, place, right? So let's talk about that. What are hormones? We think we know, right? We think, oh, hormones, these are the things we have to have in order to, make a baby. Yeah, that's true for a time in our life, but not the entire time of our life, right? Are your body's chemical messengers, right? They influence your hunger, your sleep, your mood, your fat storage, and your energy production. See, there's a lot of these things that are repetitive, right? So we have to actually figure out what we can do to affect these things positively, right? During menopause, we know key hormones are shifting. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them because there are six that really matter the most, but I'm just going to rattle off a couple. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone, which seems to be the one we're all dealing with in this day and age, man, woman, child, whatever. Right? When these are out of balance, or probably they're ever completely imbalanced, but when they're not working together in harmony, your body actually starts to feel chaotic, right? Unpredictable. It's exhausting, right? However, when they're supported, hormones that is, your body begins to actually feel calm and responsive again. It starts to respond to the things that you are doing. And it's impossible for your hormones to respond when they're all over the place and they're chaotic, right? And we're not doing anything to fix that. And we're making it worse by dieting and over exercising, right? So when you support your hormones, you are going to feel naturally more calm and your body will respond better again. Um, One of the things I believe that women have never been told, right? Weight gain in menopause is often hormonal protection. I'll say that again, hormonal protection, right? Not obviously a personal failure. It's your body's way of saying, I don't feel safe. I am going to protect the body the way it is now. Right? And that's storing fat, holding on to that fat. Your body is actually trying to stabilize energy, manage stress, and compensate for the decline in estrogen. I have to show this at some point. I have a great slide in one of my presentations that actually shows estrogen, like from the time you're 30 to the time you're 80, like how much it declines, right? So of course, if one of your major hormones is declining pretty steadily, of course we're not going to feel right. Our energy is going to be all over the place. Our moods are going to be erratic, right? When you diet harder, push yourself more, right? Your cortisol is going to rise. There's that cortisol again, right? Which actually makes your body hold on to weight even tighter, right? So, which is why the first and probably the first and most important hormone to shift is simple, right? It's actually it's not so simple because there's several of them, but this one I think is one that we all really understand, and it's stabilizing our blood sugar, right? If we stabilize our blood sugar, now that's insulin, which I hadn't mentioned a minute ago, but insulin stabilizing our blood sugar is going to help us to not have those spikes. It's going to keep our energy steady. It's not going to stress out our body as much. So our cortisol levels are not going to keep going through the roof. So what do I mean by that? This is your tip. Balanced meals, every meal, protein, fiber, and a healthy fat. Even your snacks, right? People always say, 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks. I probably do 3 meals a day and a snack. I don't feel I need that second snack. I know my body, and I know how many calories work for me and the type of calories that work for me. And that's something that if you're working with me, when you're working with me, that's something we figure out too. And it's not about, oh, we can only eat 1,200 calories. It's never about being on a diet. It's about giving your body the nutrition that it needs. And by balancing those meals with protein, fiber, and healthy fat, you'll be able to figure out what your body needs, right? And that sends powerful safety signals to your body. And safety is what allows your hormones to begin rebalancing or harmonizing and help you to release weight. So I've talked about metabolism, I talked about hormones, and I didn't get into each of the hormones. That's those are the things we talk about inside the midlife metabolic flip, right? So let's go to component number 3, lifestyle. When we talk about lifestyle, everybody has a bit of a different focus on this or a different take, right? When I'm talking lifestyle, I'm talking healthy lifestyle. I'm not talking about these people who are jet setting across, in a private plane, that kind of lifestyle. I mean a healthy lifestyle that works for you, that is sustainable. Sustainable here being the key, right? But I also want to define this in a little bit more of a gentler, more honest way, right? Lifestyle is not about perfection. There is no such thing. It's not about restriction. And it's definitely not about overwhelming routines, right? How many times I hear this? You have to have a morning routine and it has to be, a half an hour of meditation and 20 minutes of this. And by the time you get done with one of those morning routines, you need a nap. No, a morning routine or a lifestyle routine that makes sense, that fits into your schedule and your life wherever you are, whether you're working full-time, part-time, whether you're working from home or retired, any of these things, your routine is going to be a little bit different than your BFF or me or BFF. Lifestyle really is simply your daily rhythm, right? We want to, we get up at the same time, maybe we journal for a few minutes, maybe we go outside and look at the sun, which is really great for circadian rhythm, right? Little things that help the day, to begin the day and to live through the day, that tells your body whether it's safe or stressed. So many of us start the day stressed. Why? The alarm clock goes off, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I got to get out of bed. I got to run. I got to get my coffee. And you're starting your day stressed out, from the very beginning. In menopause, the most powerful lifestyle drivers, okay, there's a number of them. And these are not necessarily routines. These are just things that we need to pay attention to when we're creating this sustainable lifestyle. Number one, quality sleep. I know in menopause it's not always easy, right? Because we have night sweats and we're waking up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That'd be nice. 3 o'clock in the morning. But what's really important here is if that's something you're struggling with, first and foremost, that's something we can address, right? So sleep, we need to be able to sleep. If we're not sleeping, our cortisol levels go through the roof and we're holding on to weight. Well, hold on a minute. See the cycle here. We want to regulate our nervous system. What does that mean? Calm down. I believe wholeheartedly in meditation. Am I ever going to be somebody who gets up in the morning and meditates for half an hour? I don't know, maybe at some point, but that's not what I do. Right. Personally, I take about 10 minutes to sit quietly. I do this even before I get out of bed in the morning. I maybe do a little bit of journaling, and my journaling is not writing 9 paragraphs or 9 pages. It's just quickly, what are the things that I am grateful for? How do I want to start the day? How do I want to be this day? Right? Simple things that start the day in a beautiful, slow, calming rhythm. We need to, another lifestyle driver is paying attention to inflammation, right? A lot of times if you feel puffy, there's inflammation going on. As estrogen declines, our inflammation goes up. Why? Estrogen is inflammation protective. But also, what are the things that we are eating? What are the things that we are breathing in, putting on our skin? All of these things matter, right? It may be a little bit here and a little bit there, but they matter. Movement matters, right? We don't necessarily need to exercise more and exercise harder. We need to exercise smarter. We need to do the things that make sense for our body at this stage in life. And then the next piece is, I call it the emotional load, right? This really goes in with nervous system regulation, things that we're taking in. Obviously, work can be stressful. We can be emotional about that. We can get emotional about friends and family. We can get emotional about politics and the plight of the world and everything we see on social media. And when I talk about emotional load, it doesn't mean that you're crying all the time or sad, but what it means is all of these things add to your stress level, to your nervous system being kind of fried. Right. So these are things that we address during the program. And some of the other things, you can't out diet chronic stress, right? If your cortisol is high and you're gaining weight, well, dieting isn't going to help any of that. It is going to it has the opposite effect, right? Same thing, you can't out exercise exhaustion. A lot of times, I have 2 people say this to me all the time. It drives me bonkers. I'm too tired to exercise, right? Well, are you too tired because you're not sleeping or because you're not eating right? Or are you too tired because your body is just on overload? 2 different things, right? When the body only releases weight. I've said this, when it feels safe enough to do so. And with chronic stress, with exhaustion, with no sleep, with all of the things that I talked about, emotional load, the body doesn't feel safe, right? And again, it's like afraid that there's, the boogeyman is outside the house, or there's a saber-toothed tiger, the proverbial tiger, right? That's not what I mean. But what it means is it's just on overdrive, right? Safety comes from consistent sleep, calmer nervous system, nourishing food, not a diet, supportive movement. And yes, that does include uh, weightlifting, resistance training, right? The correct, proper resistance training for this stage in life, right? If you've never lifted weights before, you should not go to a gym and pick up a 35-pound weight and think you're going to do great because you're going to hurt yourself, right? Um, and again, emotional steadiness. And part of this goes, connects again to the nervous system. But part of it is stop looking at social media, like stop scrolling, right? If after dinner, if you're watching TV, that's great. And I've been guilty of this. My husband's watching something that I'm not that excited about, and I start looking at my phone. When I catch myself doing that, I have to put the phone in the other room because that, especially before you go to bed, is just increasing your stress level. You may not feel it, but once you start noticing, you will start to notice, wow, scrolling through social media, especially when it has something to do with the news and negativity, because so often social media, I mean, people don't post anything or they'll just like you. But if they have something that they don't like, oh, they're going to say, right? People can be nasty on social because it is anonymous, right? You're never going to see most of these people ever face to face. And somehow that's we've made that okay, which by the way, it is not okay. So what is the lifestyle shift that I want to talk about today for today? And I want you to remember this. Regulate before you restrict. Okay, a calmer body heals faster than a punished body every single time. So if you need to take a breath, take a break, go for a walk, right? Instead of going, oh my God, I got to lose this weight and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to lose this weight and then do all the wrong things, right? You're going into this in not in the right frame of mind, and your body knows that. So remember, a calm body heals faster. So what did we touch on today? I touched on metabolism, I touched on hormones and lifestyle. Again, these are 3 of the 7 components, the midlife metabolic flip. These are not theories. These are lived. These are tested principles that I have seen transform my and women's, me first and foremost, but women's energy, their confidence, and their health and mindset throughout menopause and midlife. Because clarity is what changes everything. Right now, I know in midlife, going through menopause, each person is doing it a little bit differently, right? We all experience different symptoms at different times, right? So how do you know what to do? If your best friend is telling you, oh, this is what I'm doing, but you're not experiencing that, right? You get all these mixed messages and all these different signals, right? And so there's no clarity there. But what we talk through in the flip is we clarify what's going on in your body and what you need. So when you understand that what's going on in your body, you stop fighting yourself and you start moving forward with confidence. Think about this. If you're 50 and you're in the middle of menopause, the menopause transition, you are going to live at least another 35 years. So this is not the end, my friends. This is your evolution. So if something that I talked about today, if something inside you is stirring as you listen, pay attention to that, because midlife is not the season where your vitality fades, right? It's a season where truth asks to rise. It asks you to rise, right? You can keep pushing through exhaustion, confusion, and have a body that feels unfamiliar and that's constantly fighting, or You can choose clarity, you could choose support, and a path that finally makes sense to you. So this next cohort of the Midlife Metabolic Flip begins February 25th. And this is your invitation to stop guessing and start living in a body that feels good, that feels steady and energized and fully yours again. So if you're ready for that kind of change, take that first step and register for the flip. You were never meant to navigate this chapter alone, though so many of us have. And the next version of you, this next best version of you, is closer than you think. I'm Denise Stegall, the Menopause Mentor. I'll see you again soon. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Healthy Living, Happy Midlife. My hope is that today's conversation left you inspired, encouraged, and ready to take the next step toward creating a vibrant, fulfilling life that you deserve. Remember, you don't have to settle for fatigue, brain fog, or frustration. Midlife is not the end of your story. It's the doorway to your next best chapter. And I'm here to help you walk through it with energy, with confidence, and with joy. So if you're ready to take this journey further, I invite you to schedule a free strategy call with me. The link is in the show notes. And together we'll design a plan that works for you at this time in your life, for your body. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review your show, the show on your favorite podcast platform. Catch the video version on YouTube so you never miss another episode. Share it with a friend who needs to hear that midlife can truly be the most powerful season of her life. Until next time, I'm Denise Stegall, reminding you that healthy living, happy midlife is just possible. It's yours for the taking.